I still can't believe I was forced to choose between the woman I was supposed to marry and a dog that belonged to her toxic ex. No, scratch that. The choice was between her, a dog, and my own sanity, all inside a cramped 600 square foot apartment. The truly insane part is that she was the one who insisted on bringing the dog home, not as a favor to a friend, not as a rescue, but as some twisted, self-inflicted therapy session she called closure. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but this whole nightmare was all about a golden retriever named Zeus and the ghost of a relationship I thought was long dead. So I have to ask you straight up, was I wrong to take the extreme measure I did to get that dog out of my apartment, even if it meant risking my entire engagement? Stick around, because the answer might surprise you, and I need you to tell me if you would have done the same thing. This story begins about 6 months before everything imploded, when my life with Sarah was still, for the most part, perfect. We were recently engaged, had just moved into a charming, albeit very small apartment in a great part of the city, and were deep in the throes of wedding planning. Sarah was a whirlwind of energy, passionate, driven, and my absolute best friend. The only dark cloud hovering over her otherwise sunny disposition was her ex-fiancé, Mark. He was the kind of guy who sucked the air out of every room, and their 4-year relationship had been a slow, emotionally draining train wreck. I knew I was the rebound, but I believed I was the permanent rebound, the guy who helped her heal and move on for good. Mark and Sarah had shared a dog, Zeus, a beautiful, high-energy golden retriever. When they finally broke up a year before, I even met Sarah. Mark got to keep Zeus, mainly because Sarah knew she couldn't give the dog the time and space he needed. For months, she'd talk about Zeus with this heartbreaking nostalgia. I was supportive. I really was. I understood the bond, but I also thought that, like all other baggage from her past, it would eventually fade into a gentle memory. Then, about 3 months into our new apartment lease, she got the call. Mark was being relocated overseas for work, and he needed someone to take Zeus immediately. He couldn't fly the dog in time with all the quarantine restrictions, and his family couldn't take him. I braced myself for a sad conversation about having to say goodbye, but what came next blindsided me. Sarah looked at me with those big, hopeful eyes and said, "We have to take him, David, just for a month or 2, until Mark figures out a permanent home. He's family." My stomach dropped. "Sarah, you know I love dogs, but Zeus is huge. He's a golden retriever. We live in a 600 square foot box with no backyard on the 5th floor, and we both work 12-hour days." I reminded her of the brutal reality. It's not fair to the dog, and it's definitely not fair to us. That's when the closure narrative began. She got teary, pulled me close, and said, "Please, David, this isn't just about the dog. This is my last chance to get proper closure with Mark's whole chapter, having Zeus here, taking care of him, being responsible for him. It's like finally taking back the piece of my life Mark controlled. It's my healing, just for a month, please." And like a fool, I crumbled, because I loved her, and because the idea of being the guy who stifled her healing felt cruel. So Zeus arrived. The next 6 weeks were pure chaos. Zeus was a sweet dog, but he was accustomed to a house with a yard. Our tiny living space became a furry, slobbery obstacle course. He kept bumping into the delicate antique lamp my grandmother had given us. His tail was a perpetual weapon against the coffee table, and the smell of wet dog was now the prevailing scent of our home. No matter how many candles I lit, my professional life, which was already stressful, became unbearable as I rushed home to walk him at lunch, navigating traffic just to sprint up 5 flights of stairs. Sarah was happy for about 2 weeks, walking him, cuddling him, and then the reality set in for her too. The walks became shorter, the training sessions non-existent, and the responsibility, inevitably, landed squarely on my shoulders. But the real issue wasn't the logistics. It was the psychological burden. Sarah didn't want the dog. She wanted the memory and the finality. Every time she looked at Zeus, she wasn't seeing a pet. She was seeing Mark, a symbol of her past, and she couldn't stop talking about it. Mark used to let him sleep in the bed. She'd sigh. Mark always drove him to the beach. She'd lament. Our entire engagement became a three-way dynamic. Me, Sarah, and the massive furry shadow of her ex-fiancé. Every conversation, every dinner, every moment of intimacy felt interrupted by the dog's presence and, consequently, by Mark's. I started to feel like a glorified dog sitter for my fiancé's ex. I felt like a footnote in the last chapter of her other love story. I tried to talk to her, gently at first. Honey, the month is up. It's been 6 weeks. We need to find him a proper home. She'd shut down instantly. You don't understand my process, David. I'm almost there. Just a little longer. The "a little longer" turned into another month, and then she was outright defensive. She started taking phone calls in the other room. Short, clipped conversations she tried to hide. I saw a text flash. On her phone one day, it was from Mark, and it wasn't about the dog's vet appointment. It was a casual question about her. My anxiety was through the roof. I felt like I was watching my future slip away because of a dog and a misguided idea of emotional healing. I was exhausted, stressed, and starting to resent the woman I was supposed to marry. The beautiful, sparkling future we had planned was now a dull, frustrating mess. I was at my breaking point. I looked at that dog, and all I could see was the physical manifestation of her inability to let go of her past. I needed to know, once and for all, if she was committed to me and our life, or still tethered to Mark and the life they had shared. The dog was the key. He had to go. So that's the situation I was in. I was engaged to a woman who was sabotaging our future by holding on to her past, represented by a beautiful, yet completely misplaced, golden retriever living in our small apartment. My attempts to be patient and understanding were met with deflection and secrecy. I felt like I was losing her, and all because of this ridiculous quest for closure that seemed to be opening more doors than it was closing. I had to make a choice, continue to swallow my feelings and watch my engagement crumble slowly, or take a decisive, painful action that would force her hand. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have waited it out, or would you have done what I did? I started by looking for a foster home, trying to bypass the conflict. I called shelters, rescue groups, and friends, but everyone had the same answer. Goldens need space, and they were all full. Then the idea hit me. It was desperate, perhaps a little cruel, but it was the only way I could see to definitively end this chapter. I decided to call Mark. I didn't call him to tell him to take his dog back. I called him to sell him the truth. I found his email address online, and I wrote him a detailed, yet incredibly professional and polite email. I explained the situation with Zeus, emphasizing how miserable the dog was in our small apartment and how this whole closure thing was actually tearing Sarah and me apart. Then I got to the punchline. I told him that Sarah was struggling to let go of their past, and that having Zeus here wasn't helping her move on. It was keeping her stuck. I appealed to his supposed love for the dog, and more importantly, to his basic decency. I suggested a solution. He needed to make a permanent, decisive move to ensure Zeus was taken care of, and in doing so, he needed to give Sarah the final, undeniable signal that their chapter was over. Mark's reply came a day later. It was short, to the point, and utterly effective. He wrote that he had already been in contact with a trusted friend from his college days, a veterinarian who lived on a farm, and had been arranging for Zeus to go there permanently once Sarah gave the final go-ahead. He hadn't told Sarah because she kept pushing back and getting emotional. He just wanted the dog to be safe and happy. He thanked me for the honesty and said he would handle it. 2 days later, I came home from work and the apartment was eerily quiet. Zeus wasn't there. Sarah was sitting on the couch, completely silent, clutching one of Zeus's old collars. She looked devastated, but also relieved. "Mark called," she whispered. "He told me he found a forever home for Zeus, a farm with a vet who loves him. He said he had to do it for the dog, and for me. He sent pictures. Zeus looks happy, David. Truly happy." Then she turned to me, her eyes red, but clear. "He also told me you called him. He told me everything you said about the closure and about us. He said I was being selfish, not just to you, but to myself, by holding on to his dog and to the idea that I needed to earn my closure. He said I already had it when I met you. That was the climax. It wasn't a shouting match or a dramatic confrontation with Sarah. It was a quiet, almost surgical intervention with her past. By involving Mark, I forced the past to close its own door, rather than trying to pry Sarah's fingers off the handle myself. My risk had paid off. The immediate aftermath was rough. Sarah was sad about Zeus leaving, but the fog that had hung over her for months finally lifted. She was incredibly angry at me for contacting Mark behind her back. She accused me of being manipulative and controlling. I didn't deny it. I simply said, "I was manipulative out of love, Sarah, because I watched you lose yourself and our future to a memory, and you wouldn't listen to me. I had to choose between being the patient, understanding fiancé who lost you, or the proactive, slightly ruthless man who fought for you." That night, we had the hardest, most honest conversation of our relationship. She confessed that having Zeus there made her feel like she had a safety net, a piece of her old life she could fall back on if our new one didn't work. The dog was a temporary bridge to her past, and I had burned that bridge down. She realized that she wasn't seeking closure. She was avoiding commitment. It took weeks for the tension to fully dissipate, but the apartment was no longer cramped, no longer smelly, and most importantly, no longer haunted by a ghost. We cancelled the wedding planning for a month and focused only on us, on the now. We're back on track now, with a deeper, more honest connection. I sometimes wonder if I overstepped, but then I remember the panic attacks and the resentment I felt, and I know I did the right thing. Zeus is happy on a farm. Sarah has her definitive closure, and our tiny apartment is finally a home, not a transition space. So, what's the real lesson here? It's that you can't be patient forever with someone who's actively choosing their past over you. Sometimes, love isn't about gentle conversations. It's about making a hard decision that forces everyone to move forward, even if it feels dramatic and risky. I put my entire engagement on the line, but by doing so, I saved the relationship from a slow, agonizing death. Like this video, if you were on my side in this crazy situation, because I still feel a little guilty about going behind her back. Subscribe for more stories like this. I've got a whole vault of Reddit drama I'm ready to share. And seriously, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I cross a line, or was it a necessary evil? I'll see you all in the next story.